We now present For the Record with Neil Heinen.
A fascinating new book looks at the history of General Motors' Janesville plant, its relationship to the city, and the reckoning that followed its closing. A conversation with author Tim Cullen is next on For the Record. Thanks for joining us. I'm Neil Heinen. Tim Cullen is a former Wisconsin state senator, former Senate Majority Leader, former Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Social Services, and former healthcare industry executive. But he's also a native son of Janesville. And he worked at the GM plant in the city for 4 years, putting himself through college, the third generation of Cullens to work at the plant. His perspective and his experiences offer valuable insight into the impact of the auto plant's closing on an important city, thousands of families, a state, and by extension, a nation. The book is disassembled, and my guest is author Tim Cullen. Thanks for doing this, Tim. Nice to see you again.
Yeah. Good to be here. Thank you.
A fascinating book and interesting. I think a lot of people are familiar with Amy Goldstein's book on Janesville. This is not that. This looks very specifically at the GM plant, and there's a lot of elements to it. And I guess I just would want to start by having you talk about what it was like to work at General Motors in the 60s, just because it's something that's shared by so many people in Janesville.
Well, it was like a very different era as I look back. I'm, of course, 18, 19, 20-year-old kid working my way through college. But it was so different. I mean, my first job was bolting in the driver's side seatbelt on the 1962 Chevy. Now, seatbelts were then optional. For some cars came down the line, don't put seatbelts in. And the other thing about it was there were no seatbelts in the back seat. You couldn't get seatbelts in the back seat. So how is that different than today? I had a chance to work in the cushion line with the women, which was where they put all the women workers, and I put me there as a substitute. So I got a chance to compare what it was like to work on the cushion line with the women and on the assembly line, which was then all men. And of course, there's another big difference. They paid the women less on the cushion line. And I, having worked on both, I knew there was no difference in the job difficulty or whatever. There was no reason, job-related, to pay differently. And then I find the person that helped bust that.
Doris.
Doris Tome. Yes.
We're going to talk about Doris. But it was prideful work. I mean, people were proud to work at GM. 7,000, was that the top number?
It peaked at around that, yes.
Yeah, 7,000 employees.
Oh, my dad worked there. We had a middle-class lifestyle because my father worked at General Motors. We were proud to work there. It was the best summer job in all of Rock County, was to get a job at the plant. And I got a job there because my dad worked there. That was how it worked. And so it was a big break in my life, and it was due to my father working for General Motors.
And Janesville was proud to have General Motors in the city.
Oh, very proud, very proud. It was referred to as the plant. You didn't have to say GM plant or General Motors plant. You just said the plant, and everybody knew what you meant.
Yeah. So there are the four elements of the book that really stuck out for me, Tim, is your insights into the auto industry then and now, the role of labor in all of this that I want to talk about, Janesville and Wisconsin and how they dealt with the rumors and the eventual closing of it, and then the heroes. But start with the auto industry. What was the auto industry like then and over the 20, 30 pivotal years of this book?
Well, the auto industry, specifically GM, had decided that for profit reasons, they were going to focus on the larger vehicles. They weren't going to go compete with the more fuel-efficient Japanese competition.
This is after you were long gone. This is like in the 80s now, right?
Yeah, that was in the 80s and 90s. And that worked as long as gas prices stayed reasonably low. And made a lot of money in Janesville. GM did. A lot of workers made a lot of money. Those were terrific years, the 80s, the late 80s, 90s, early 2000s. And then everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Gas went to $4 a gallon. People stopped buying these big vehicles. The Great Recession came at the same time. And then what we didn't know was that, which made all the difference, General Motors was going broke. And we're trying to get them to save one plant, and their people are trying to save their whole corporation and, by extension, their own jobs.
Yep. I mean, one of the most fascinating aspects of the book, Tim, is what you learned about what we didn't know then. And, you know, and I remember at the time, there would always be rumors. It reminds me a little bit of the recent example of Oscar Mayer here. There was just constant kind of churn of what is the commitment of ownership to the Janesville plant. And there was always some fear that maybe it would end. But it was countered by this reassurance that, no, we're always going to be here.
Yeah, because they always had been, since 1923. But the loss of 4,600 jobs in 1 year from the plant itself, all the workers that lost their jobs there, plus the supplier plants. Supplier plants built themselves around in assembly plants so they could get the parts there quicker. They all closed. In total, 4,600 good-paying jobs. Every one of them were, including the supplier plants, were union jobs. They were UAW jobs. They had pensions. They had benefits. They had health insurance. They had good pay. Gone in 1 year, in the middle of a Great Recession.
And what does that tell us about at that point in time, the evolution of labor as a force in this country?
Well, it tells you that labor has been essential to a working class, middle class. Unions have been essential to a working class, middle class. And without them, you see more and more jobs, light manufacturing that are non-union jobs, often don't have many benefits of any health insurance, maybe no pensions, maybe a 401k. I mean, it's dramatically changed the opportunity for the worker and their family to have a true middle-class lifestyle. It's damaged greatly by the diminishment of unions.
One of the heroes in this book is Walter Reuther. And when we come back, I want to talk about him and the other heroes with Tim Cullen, the author of Disassembled, right after this.
For the Record, sponsored by MG&E, your community energy company.
When you try the new Tempur-Pedic Breeze, you'll feel how it helps you sleep cooler. So no more nocturnal baking or polar ice cap air conditioner mode. Because the Tempur-Pedic Breeze transfers heat away from your body. So you sleep cool all night long. Experience the superior cooling comfort of the Tempur-Pedic Breeze today.
For a limited time, shop Tempur-Pedic at Denver Mattress and save up to $500 on select adjustable mattress sets. Denver Mattress, the easiest way to get the right mattress.
Go in the snow plus MPG, your Subaru Ascent from Don Miller. With standard symmetrical all-wheel drive and 27 MPG highway, the Ascent will get you through in great shape. It's the roomiest Subaru ever. The Ascent has third-row seating and space for 7 or 8 passengers. The 2020 Ascent Premium, lease from only $319 a month, 36 months, 10,000 miles per year, $19.99 due on signing, no security deposit. Don Miller Subaru, West on Odana or East Side, High Crossing Boulevard, Madison.
Don Miller.
Winter in Wisconsin, it's a time for going all the way up and throwing down. It's a time for discovering something cool and gathering somewhere warm. Whether you want to spend winter inside, outside, or both, there's something for everyone in Wisconsin.
This election season, politicians are targeting Wisconsin, making promises and claims to capture your vote. But you deserve the truth. Only Reality Check gives you the tools you need to make informed choices. I'm News 3 Now political reporter Amy Reed. I'm breaking down political ads, explaining whose money is behind them and separating truth from misinformation. Get the facts with Reality Check, only on News 3 Now.
Tim Cullen, who I think was last on this show talking about his first book, Ringside Seat, about Act 10, and the Governor Walker administration has written a new book. It's called Disassembled. Native son of Janesville and General Motors, a story of grit, race, gender, and wishful thinking at what it means for America, the closing of the GM plant in Janesville. The four people that you single out as heroes in this book, Tim, start with Jim Lee, but then Walter Reuther, who was just this giant in the labor movement. Talk about his role in all of this.
Well, first of all, he was the international president of the whole UAW from 1947 until he died in a plane crash in 1970. First thing he did when he took over as president of the union in 1947, he had to kick communists and communist sympathizers and the mob out of the UAW. That's the first thing he had to accomplish. And they tried to assassinate him.
Nearly cost him his life, yeah.
Darn near killed him.
Yep.
And he had trouble with his arm the rest of his life. That's a whole story that I tell about the assassination. But what was so great about Walter Reuther was he cared about the workers, the members of his union, which grew to be 1.5 million. But he also, unlike any other labor leader I've ever known, he worked on issues that helped the broader United States population and economy, not just work solely on behalf of his members, more money for them. He wanted all of America to do better.
Yeah. But then locally, Jim Lee, I mean, he similarly was just an iconoclastic leader.
Yeah. And I knew him pretty well. He was a classic. And what was so great about Jim Lee was he had a tough job. The shop chairman is a tough job. The union president is always well known in the public, and they are the leader. But the shop chairman is the one that negotiates with management changes to the contract. And then, after they negotiate it, the shop chairman has to sell it to the union membership. Membership doesn't vote for it, changes are made. And he was crucial to be the person there in 1986 when Janesville was facing the real risk of losing GM entirely in 1986. Ended up keeping him until 2008. But Jim Lee was a central person that negotiated some changes. He had a great line. He had a great way with words, a lot of which I couldn't all put in the book. But one he mentioned was that when he was negotiating those changes, of course, anything change you made which was in any way beneficial to management meant that there were some people in the plant who had a long history of reluctance to think much of management. And they would think that Jim Lee was selling the farm. He was giving up too much to management. He was selling out. And Lee said when he walked around the plant, he said he felt like a giant fire hydrant.
Right.
That was Jim Lee.
Right.
But he negotiated the changes. The thing was they had to negotiate changes to the contract that would impress Detroit. That Detroit had to keep General Motors in Janesville, and that's what he accomplished.
He must have had a good relationship with Reuther, huh?
Yeah, he would have loved Reuther, and Reuther would have loved him.
Yep.
But he also was able to work with the plant manager, whose name was Mike Cullen, and fortunately he was there because he was a kind of a progressive-looking, viewing plant manager.
Right.
And so they were the right two people at the right time. It's amazing in American history how often that happens, that the right person's there. And they were the right two. And they saved the plant for 22 more years.
Yeah. The other two heroes speak to gender and race, Tim. And, I mean, you talked about the Cullen line, and that's where Doris Tom worked. What made her a hero?
Doris Tom was a married mother of three, and was working on the Cullen line. And for one reason...
The women's line.
The women's line, where only women work. There's about 80 women there per shift. And she found out that the men were making more on the assembly line, which was where 90+% of the people worked. So she wanted to go work on the assembly line where there were no women because she wanted to make more money to support her family. She figured out that the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which we think of as so much as influencing the South, it really influenced the North as well, that the Civil Rights Act said you couldn't discriminate based on gender in private employment. So she marches into the plant manager's office with the Civil Rights Act of 64 in her hand and says, I want to work on that assembly line. Civil Rights Act of 64 says I can, and if you won't put me on the assembly line, I'm going to sue you. Plant manager folded like a tent, did the right thing, put her on the assembly line. So she became the first woman to ever work on the assembly line. And I tell lots of stories about the challenges she faced being the only woman there.
Yeah, the environment, the male environment in which she worked is not one of the brighter stories of GM at the time.
Right. And it reflected, I think, not only the attitudes in the plant, but attitudes of society in general at that time.
Right. By contrast, though, Tim, the story of John Scott, and particularly moving into the neighborhood in Janesville, I think is illustrative of a reaction that you wouldn't have expected necessarily in Janesville.
Yeah, it was 1948,
yep.
And he comes with his family, and the realtor says, well, he wanted to buy this one house. The realtor says, well, you can buy the house, but you have to go talk to 3 or 4 neighbors and make sure, and they have to say they're okay with you buying the house. And he didn't get irritated by that. He just went to the neighbors. And he worked in a railroad then, and 2 of the neighbors worked in a railroad. So all of a sudden, they're railroad guys talking to each other about the railroad rather than about the color of their skin. Yeah. They all said, you can move in. So that was his beginning, but he couldn't get hired at the plant.
I mean, are you surprised that the Janesville you grew up in actually was that welcoming to an African-American man?
Well, what I found, particularly with this book, more than I remember as a kid, was that there were lots of people in Janesville who had very open and positive attitudes towards people of race. They were going to judge them by what they were, not what color their skin was. It was just sort of the power structure and the realtors, the bankers. Those folks did not want, and a lot of people in power in the community did not want people of color in Janesville. They wanted to keep Janesville all white. And I tell a story about the city manager's first job in 1976, where a business leader came and told him that if he hadn't seen any blacks, that when he went around the town, that was the way they liked it.
Yeah.
That was the city manager's introduction to Janesville.
Yeah.
Not that long ago, 1976.
When we come back, I want to talk about Janesville of today and the future. But before that, we're going to talk a little bit about how state government, the role state government played in the closing of all of this with Tim Cullen right after this.
When you try the new Tempur-Pedic Breeze, you'll feel how it helps you sleep cooler. So no more nocturnal baking or polar ice cap air conditioner mode. Because the Tempur-Pedic Breeze transfers heat away from your body, so you sleep cool all night long. Experience the superior cooling comfort of the Tempur-Pedic Breeze today.
For a limited time, shop Tempur-Pedic at Denver Mattress and save up to $500 on select adjustable mattress sets. Denver Mattress, the easiest way to get the right mattress.
You know who really loves fresh food? Amateur chefs, stay-at-home parents, salad lovers, barbecuers, smorgasborders, hors d'oeuvres, fondue-ers, and flambéers, midnight snackers, brown baggers, bakers, and throw it in the microwavers. At Pick and Save, you can get all the fresh you want at a great price with same-day pickup and delivery. Because we believe in fresh for everyone.
These folks, they don't have time to go to the post office. They have businesses to grow, customers to care for, lives to get home to. They use Stamps.com. Print discounted postage for any letter, any package, anytime, right from your computer. All the amazing services of the post office, only cheaper. Get our special TV offer, a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. Go to Stamps.com/deal and never go to the post office again.
Here at Harker Heating and Cooling of Madison, we are proudly celebrating over 70 years of excellence. A lot can change in 70 years, but some things never do, like our commitment to providing our customers with 100% satisfaction every single day. When you make that call to Harker, you can be rest assured that a team of qualified, trustworthy, skilled individuals are ready to address your home service concerns. Harker Heating and Cooling, your hometown heroes for over 70 years.
Harker Heating and Cooling.
Follow us on all your favorite social media sites and never miss a thing. Share your photos and comments with us and stay connected.
My guest is former Wisconsin State Senator Tim Cullen, who has written another book, this one Disassembled, on the relationship between the General Motors plant in Janesville and the city itself, and all of the influences that led to GM closing that plant and its impact on the city. And during that time, Tim, I mean, you were watching and being a part of state government's role in all of this, and even to a degree, the President of the United States, two presidents' roles in all of this. You characterize it in the book. Sum that up.
Well, the reality was General Motors was in charge. If the city of Janesville or a state government thought they were in charge of these out-of-state corporations staying or going, the reality is the corporation is in charge. So you do everything you can to show them that you care about them and you want them here. They wanted a new interchange on I-90. We got the bill passed. Taxpayers paid for an interchange, Avalon Road interchange. Then a decade or so later, they wanted a separate private road basically from the interchange right into the plant, so that all the trucks bringing in supplies from the interstate didn't have to drive on city streets and could get a direct shot. First thing was done under Governor Tony Earl, a Democrat, the interchange. The road was done under Governor Tommy Thompson, a Republican. Taxpayers paid for that road. They named it Ruther Way. But you just kept doing whatever GM asked to let them know you wanted them to stay. But at the end of the day, we found out they were in charge.
Yeah, and even, I mean, the move of the line to Texas, Bush is president, you know, President Obama's role in all of that. There are layers to this story that I think when they see that, they understand a little bit better how this happened.
Right. What really mattered to GM was members of Congress who had positions of influenced their industry. And Michigan had John Dingell in 2008, Congressman Dingell, right, who chaired a committee that was in charge of the fuel efficiency standards, miles per gallon requirements for vehicles, et cetera. All the things that GM really cared about. Well, Michigan had John Dingell, and we didn't. We did have someone of comparable power in the late Congressman Les Aspin, right, but his power, and then he lost his life back in the 1990s.
Paul Ryan was a freshman.
Paul Ryan was in the back row of the minority party in 2008.
Yep.
Had he been Speaker, which he eventually became in 2008,
whole different game. Yeah.
Maybe a different story.
Yeah. So what's Janesville like today? I mean, how has it dealt with this, Tim, and how does it influence Janesville's vision of the future?
Well, it's now 11 years. The plant's now torn down. That's the picture on the cover of the book. Yeah. It's been a long slog back, but the process gets better. The progress continues. The only way it was going to be easy would it be if General Motors had come back or some other big employer came with 3,000 jobs. Didn't happen. Yeah. So when you lose 4,600 jobs like that, it's a long slog back. It's incremental progress. And are we as well off today as we were the day that General Motors left? I would say no. The poverty levels in the community have risen. They rose significantly after the plant closed, and they've stayed that high. So the middle class, upper middle class are doing well in town. There's just a lot of poverty, which is no different than most of the communities, larger communities in the state of Wisconsin.
You have been engaged in that element of it too, Tim. I mean, after you left the Senate the second time, you were on the school board, right?
Yes.
In Janesville.
Yeah.
And the profits from this book are all going to the Janesville Multicultural Teacher Scholarship Foundation, which you started. Talk about that.
Well, Janesville, as we've been talking, was an all-white community for most of its history. But starting in about the 1980s, it has become more racially diverse. We now have nearly 30% of our students are students of color. If you looked at the people in my age group, it's probably still 90% white. But what's coming in Janesville, Madison, lots of places. Yep. So almost 30% of the kids are kids of color. Almost all of our teachers were white. And so I started a scholarship foundation, and they were not able to hire people of color, teachers of color, to move to teach in Janesville. So I thought, I think the answer is under our nose. What about the kids of color in Janesville? Some must want to be teachers. So that was the birth of the foundation. And so we provide up to $5,000 a year for 5 years. And they go to school, get their degree, get their certification, and they agree to come back and teach in Janesville. That's sort of the simple deal. We help pay your way through. You agree to teach in Janesville.
How many teachers are in there now?
There are 8 now, which is may look like a small number isolated, but there's only 3 other teachers of color that the district has hired. And we have 9 in college. And this year, for the first time, when we interview the students next month, we're going to be able to offer 4 scholarships. The first year, we've been able to offer 4 in 1 year. So we're excited. It's going this way, but it's taken longer than I thought when I started it.
Any of them going to your alma mater at UW-Whitewater?
A lot of them do. a lot of them go to URock, University of Wisconsin, Rock County campus for their first 2 years, live at home, and the scholarship pays almost all the tuition if you live at home and don't have room, room and board costs. And then you can commute to Whitewater too if you want to. So that's been the general path of the teachers is URock, Whitewater. Some have gone Stevens Point. A couple of them are up here in Madison this year.
It's a remarkable book, Tim. Congratulations. Disassembled.
Thank you.
We're going to come back and wrap up For the Record right after this.